So in this next video looking at pie charts, we'll be focusing on reverse questions and reading information from a pie chart. And this will include finding the frequency of a particular slice or a section, and also finding the total frequency from the pie chart. Now on the pie chart on the board, that is true. It's true. Now in the previous video looking at drawing pie charts, we looked at drawing a pie chart from a frequency table. However, sometimes you may be given a pie chart and you will either be asked questions relating to what the pie chart shows, so for example, which one was the most popular, which one was least popular, or you may even be asked to find the frequency of a certain section, or even the total frequency. So in other words, how many people were asked in total, how many things they were that were surveyed, etc. Now, as we mentioned in the previous video, that there are two types of pie chart questions you can get. So you can get ones where the circle is split up into sections, so it may be split up into sections of 8 or 10 or even 6, or a question might be just a blank circle and you then need to work with angles. So the first type of question we'll look at is when pie charts are split into sections. Now to find the frequency either of certain slices or of the whole entire circle, then we kind of need to use the following formulas. Now I know you may be thinking, another formula that I need to learn. Well, you can kind of break this formula down because this formula is very, very similar to the ones from the previous video. All it is just that certain bits have been rearranged. So here, to work out the frequency of a particular section or a slice, let's say, it's not very mathematical, but it's probably how you're more likely to remember it, is that it's the total frequency divided by the total number of parts in the pie chart. So this is the total number of sections. So total number of parts. So what you're actually doing is you're finding out what the quantity of one part is. So that's what this fraction is actually working out. It's actually working out how many are in one section. And then all you then need to do is then multiply that by the number of sections of the part that you're actually wanting. So it kind of makes a bit of sense. So really, with a bit of practice and a sort of acknowledging what it is you're actually calculating, we may even make it easier for you to remember, because again, you might see it as something that you need to do rather than something that you need to remember in terms of its formula sort of format. Now the next one you might get asked is the total frequency. So this is basically how many people, and I put that in brackets, inverted commas rather, how many people were asked in total. Now to do this, what we need to do is do the frequency of a particular section. You'll always be given one section and divide that by how many parts there are in that particular section. And again, what you're doing is you're actually working out how many are in one section. So again, so how many are in one section. And then once you know how many are in one section, all you then need to do is multiply that by how many sections there are in total. So let's put this into practice in terms of some questions. So this question says we need to complete the table, and what the columns that are empty are the number of students and a percentage. So straight away I can see that in this particular pie chart that I've got total of 10 sections. Now it also tells me that I've got a total, or the total frequency is 60. So what I then need to do is work out how many people are in one section. And how do I do that? Well, there are 60 people and there are 10 sections, so that means that there are 6 people per section. So from this, what I could then do, well, if each section is 6, so let me just get this pen here. So that's 6, that's 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. So looking at the number of students, so for Polish it's 1 6, so that's just going to be 6. For Chinese, that's 1 section, so that's also going to be 6. For Urdu, that's 3 times 6, which is 18. For Gujarati, that's going to be 3 times 6, which is also 18. And for Somali, it's going to be 2 times 6, which is 12. So there I've completed my pie chart in terms of, well, not the pie chart, the table in terms of its frequency column. So if a worded question was to ask me, well, if 60 people were asked in total, looking at the pie chart, how many people have an additional home language of, let's say, Gujarati, then what you'd need to do is work out how many are in one slice and then multiply it by how many slices are in the Gujarati section. Now, in terms of the percentage, now for this, what we need to kind of look at is the proportion. So there is a video that is on my channel that shows you how to write proportion in the form of percentages, decimals, or fractions. Now, this could easily have asked me what fraction, or let's say have an additional language of, let's say, Chinese or Urdu, in which then I'd either have to write as a fraction or as a percentage. Now, as this one is a percentage, well, the percentage is going to be equal to the number of students divided by the total number of students multiplied by 100. Now, multiplying by 100 because I'm wanting a percentage. Now, if I was wanting just a fraction, then that would be just this bit. So it would be how many people there are, the frequency, divided by, let me just write that this top one is the frequency and this is the total frequency. So if I wanted just a fraction, all I need to do is basically divide the frequency by the total frequency and divide it and simplify it rather. So to work out the percentage of the first one, it's going to be 6 divided by 60 multiplied by 100, which equals 10%. And then obviously for Chinese, that's going to be exactly the same. For Urdu, well, again, each percentage is going to be basically 10. So looking at this then, that's going to be, Urdu has got 3 sections, so that's going to be 30%. But again, if I wanted to, I could write it as 18 over 60, multiply that by 100, and I'd get 30%. Gujarati is going to be the same because it's the same calculation. And for Somali, it's going to be 2 sections, so that's going to be 20%, which again is simply going to be 12 over 60 multiplied by 100. And that would give me 20%. And that all should add up to 100%. So let's look at another question. So in this question, it says that a group of students were asked what size shoe they wore. The pie chart shows the results. Copy and complete the table. Now for this, it hasn't given me the total, but what it has done, it's told me how many are wearing size 6. Now size 6 is 3 sections. So for taking the size 6, and that equals 3 sections, and that equals 6 people, or 6 students I should say. Now for that then, what that then means is if I divide both these numbers by 3, that means that one section will equal 2 people. So if one section equals 2, then what I can then do is simply write in each of these coloured sections, just write 2 to what they were. So size 4 is 2 sections, that's 2 times 4. 2 times 2, which is 4. For size 5, that's just 1, 2. And for size 7, that's 2 lots of 2, which is 4. Now, if it asks me for the total, all I've got to do is just add these numbers up, and I get a total of 16. So again, these types of questions, it's just a case of working with the number of parts and then just kind of working it. But your first initial thought should always be how many people are in one section, and then from that, you can then work out the rest of the question. Now, if the question asked me what's the fraction of each of these, then for the first one, it'd be 4 over 16, which would be the frequency divided by the total frequency. And I can simplify that as 1 over 4. Size 5 would be 2 over 16, which simplifies to give me 1/8. Size 6 would be 6 over 16, which is simplified to give me 3 over 8. And size 7, which would be 4 over 16, which would be 1 over 4. So again, if it asked me as a fraction, I could easily do it. If it went on to ask me for about percentage, all I need to do is multiply each of these numbers by 100. Oh, let's get the multiplication right. And that would then give me what the percentage of each of those are. Now, let's say you were given a question where your pie chart is not broken up into sections. Instead, it's just a blank circle, and it's going to involve angles. Now, this is probably what's more expected in a higher sort of exam. But again, it's important that you don't make questions more difficult than what they actually do by just assuming that it is angles that we're working with. Now, again, these formulas, you might be thinking again, oh, another set of formulas that I need to learn. But again, what we're doing is if you break it down, then what we're actually doing is doing the exact same thing with regards to the previous sort of part with regards to sections. Now, what this fraction is actually working out is basically how many people is in 1 degree. I don't know why I was going to write percentage. Let's just get rid of that little mark there. So basically, that is what the question is asking. That's what this fraction is asking. Because if I know how many people are in 1 degree, I know that in a total pie chart that there are 360 degrees. And so rather than working with sections of, let's say, 8 or 6 or 10 even, what we're doing is working with a pie that's split up into 360 slices. And then obviously, this is the angle of the slice that you are working with. Again, I don't really like the word slice, but again, pie chart, you think pie, you think pizza, slice. So the next one is working out the total frequency. So again, depending on what it is you're working out, so the first formula works out how many are in one slice. This second formula works out how many there are in total, so the total circle, the total pie chart. So again, what we're doing here is working with this fraction, and this fraction again is telling me how many people are in 1 degree. And then once I know what 1 degree is, then a full circle is going to be 360, and that's why we're multiplying by 360. So let's have a look at an example where angles are involved. Now, in this particular question, it says that a pie chart shows the popularity of 5 animals at a zoo, and the question is asking me to complete the table. Now, the only information that I've been given is that I know that there are the frequency of monkey is 54 degrees. Now, for this, a typical question in an exam would ask you how many people, if 54 people chose monkey, how many people chose tiger, or how many people chose otter, or they could even ask you what was the total frequency, which is what we're working out. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use these formulas to work out what the other set to complete the table. So not only do I need to work out what the frequency of each of the other sections are, I'm also going to work out the total frequency. Now, the key thing with this is that I need to know what the total frequency is before I can work out the frequencies of the other amounts. So the first thing I need to do is find the total frequency. Now, how I do that is I'm going to use this formula here. So it's the frequency of the section. Now, well, actually, before I do that, what I need to do is I need to measure this angle. Now, why I'm measuring that one? Because that is the frequency that I do know. Now, if I measure that angle with my protractor, it's a obtuse angle. So again, using my common sense, so I measure it accurately and I get 108 degrees. So for this, what I need to do is work out the total frequency. So to work out the total frequency, that's going to be 54, which is the frequency of monkey, divided by 108. Now that will tell me how many people there are in 1 degree, and there are 360 degrees in a circle. So all I need to do is enter that onto my calculator, and I get an answer of 180. So that means that 180 people were asked in total. Now I know from the angles that they're all going to add up to 360. So now I've got my total frequency, I can now work out what the other frequencies are going to be. Now, in order for me to do that, I need to measure each of the other angles. So now with the zebra, if I measure this angle here, now again, that is going to be an acute angle, and I worked that out using my angle measure or protractor as being 78 degrees. Now, as you can see, you're going to need to try and be as accurate as possible. In an exam, they're usually quite nice numbers, to be honest. They'll either be factors of 5 or 10, so it'll either be an angle that ends in a 5 or ends in a 0, just so that accuracy is not coming into question. Then if I measure the tiger angle, which is this angle here, which again is another acute angle, I get the angle as being 32 degrees. If I look at otter, well, that there measured is a perfect right angle, so always use your protractor to measure these angles, and that's going to be 90 degrees. And then the final one for elephant, which is this angle here, I get that to be 52 degrees. Now again, how I've got these angles is by using the protractor. So using protractor and measuring. Now, to work out the frequency, well, from this I can see that if 180 people and there's 360 degrees, then basically each, in terms of the angle, basically what it's going to be is one person is 2 degrees. So now that I've got the angles of each of those, I can now work out what the frequency is going to be. Now to do that, what I need to do is use the frequency is going to be equal to the angle of the section divided by 360, and I'm going to multiply that by the total frequency. So for zebra, and I'll try and do that in different colours so you can see exactly what I'm working out. So for the zebra, it's going to be the angle, which is 78, divided by 360, and I'm going to multiply that by 180. So from this, I can see that the angle, the frequency is going to be 36 degrees. Now for tiger, it's going to be, I'll just do that in orange appropriately, that's going to be 32 divided by 360 multiplied by 180, and that gives me an answer of 16. Now one thing I should notice, as mentioned, that these numbers are basically half, so all I need to do is divide the angle by 2. Now that's not always going to be the case, and that's only because I can see a relationship between 360 and 180. But again, the formula is always going to work, especially if you're using a calculator paper. But if it was non-calculated, then that is definitely something that I would need to spot, that the angle is twice the size of the frequency. So for otter, it's 90 degrees, half of that is 45, and half of 52 is going to be 26. Now then, once I've completed the frequencies, I can then easily work out what the fractions are going to be. So the fraction is going to be 30. I don't know why I've put a degree there on 36. Let's just get rid of that. And then so for the fraction, it's going to be 36 over 180, which again, if I then go on to simplify that, 36 over 180, it simplifies to give me 1/5. The next one, it's going to be 54 over 180, which simplified gives me 3 over 10. For tiger, it's going to be 16 over 180. So let me just quickly write that. So 180, which simplifies to give me 4 over 45. And then 45 over 180, which is a quarter. And then last one, which is 26 over 180, which simplifies to give me 13 over 90. Now moving on to the next question. So this question says that pie chart shows the manufacture of trainers or from 36 children. Complete the table. Now in this particular question, we've been given the total frequency. So here it's 36. Now I also know that the total number of angles is going to be 360. So this question could easily be a non-calculated paper, although it is unlikely. Or it could be actually. So here, one thing I've got to note, is there a common multiple that goes from the total frequency to 360? Well, yes, it's times 10. So if I want to go in the opposite direction, so if I know what the angle is, all I need to do is divide by 10, and it would tell me what the frequency is. So what I now need to do is, with my protractor or angle measurer, is measure these angles. So for Nike, it's going to be 110 degrees, and again I worked that out by measuring it with my equipment, measuring angle equipment. For Puma, I worked that out as being 80 degrees, and again try and use your knowledge of acute and obtuse. So if an angle in the pie chart looks obtuse, you know it's going to be more than 90. If it's acute, you know it's going to be less than 90, and that should help you decide which of the two numbers on your protractor or angle measurer that you need to use. For Reebok, this angle here, that's 60 degrees. For Gola, that is 20 degrees, and it's this angle here that I'm measuring, which is the smallest. And then for Adidas, that's a perfect right angle, so that's going to be 90 degrees. So from this, I can use my calculator, and again, to work out the frequency, the formula was the angle divided by 360 multiplied by the total frequency. So, or what I could do is use divide it by 10 and I'll work out the angle. So either formula, either which way you want to work it, is entirely up to you. So using the formula is the clever way of doing it, because that's obviously the correct way that always works, whereas the smart way would be recognizing and comparing the angle to the total frequency, and you can then find an easier way of doing it. So the frequency for Nike is going to be 11, Puma is going to be 8, Reebok is going to be 6, Gola is going to be 2, and for Adidas or Adidas, depending on how you say it, 9. Then working out the fraction, again that's going to be 11 over 36, which doesn't simplify. The next one's going to be 8 over 36, which does simplify because I can divide both numbers by 4, so that's going to be 2/9. And it's going to be 6 over 36, which simplifies to give me 6. It would be 2 over 36, which is 1/18. The next one is 9 over 36, which is a quarter. So a worded question could easily say, what fraction is Puma, in which then you'd have to work out the frequency and then work out the fraction. So don't automatically think that you'll always be given a table. It may be just a case of you having to work this out and then using the components to then work out what the answer to any potential worded question is. Now again, if you're wanting a percentage instead of a fraction, then all you need to do is just simply, with the fraction, simply multiply that by 100. And that will give you the fraction, the percentage. But that usually appears on a calculator paper. So let's have a look at this question. So in this particular question, we'd be given the percentage. Now for this, we haven't been given a pie chart, but a question could easily ask you to work out what the angle sort of hypothetically would be if you had to draw it. Now for this, we know that there are 200 and we know what the total frequency is going to be. Now for this, what I need to do is to work out the angle. All I need to do is, with the percentage, is multiply 360 by the fraction of the percentage. The fraction of the percentage, or I can do 360 multiplied by the decimal equivalent of the percentage. Now if you're not too sure what I mean by that, well, 10% as a decimal is 0.1, 35% as a decimal is 0.35, 22.5% is 0.225, 20% is 0.2, and 12% is 0.125. And again, if you're not too sure how I've got the decimals, it's simply going to be the percentage divided by 100, and that will give you the numbers I've got in pink. So working out the angles to these then, I just need to multiply these numbers by 360. Again, just going to times that by 360, times that by 360, 360, times 360, times 360. So for this, the first one's going to be 36 degrees. Then I've got 0.35 times 360 gives me 126. Then I've got 0.225 times 360, that gives me 81. And I've got 0.20 times 360, that gives me 72. And 0.125 times 360, and that gives me an answer of 45 degrees. Now to check, I just add those numbers up and they should add up to 360, which they do. Now again, to work out the frequency, what I need to do is the angle divided by 360 multiplied by the total frequency, which in this case is 240. So working out the frequency for the first one, that's going to be 36 divided by 360 multiplied by 240. So typing that into my calculator, I get an answer of 24. And then for the next one, it's going to be 126 divided by 360 multiplied by 240. Again, 126 divided by 360 times by 240 gives me 84. And then it's going to be 81 divided by 360 multiplied by 240. It's 81 divided by 360 times 240 equals 54. And then 72 divided by 360 times 240. And again, this formula is exactly the one that we looked at previously, which again, strongly recommend you include in your notes. Multiplied by 240 gives me an answer of 48. And then with the last one, it's going to be 45 divided by 360 times by 240, and that gives me an answer of 30 people. So what I've got there is my frequencies of each of those particular sections. Now again, if a question was to ask me about fractions, then again all I need to do is convert that percentage into a fraction, or I could use the frequency, divide that by the total frequency, and I would have my fraction. But again, it really is important that you understand how to write proportions both as a fraction, decimal, and a percentage, because it will make working with pie charts, particularly reverse questions, so much easier. And there we go. Now we'll put some practice questions in the description below for you to practice everything you've got, and obviously I will include the answers to that to check that you are doing it correctly.